Oh
All
boy.
right. No views yet. All right.
Is that a dead chicken? What's
Yeah,
the okay?
that's a dead chicken.
Care about your car? Check this out. We're applying a high.
What the? All right, did you hear that? If you care
Okay.
about your car, you come to the right place. We're going to do some maintenance tips today. All right. I'm Arthur Spooner, and we got Rico Suave. As you can see, Judah Buddha's not here. He is actually on the road traveling to North Carolina. So we wish him the best and safe travels.
Mhm.
All right. So today we're going to talk about insult comedy or roasting. And, you know, it's funny because when I think of your style of humor, I think of kind of roasting because I think that that's kind of what you usually do when you're with friends and stuff. You're kind of like opportunities come up, you kind of roast people. So to me, this felt like the perfect topic to talk with you because it just seems like right down your alley.
Should I be offended by that comment, or should I take that as a compliment? I don't know. I'm
Well,
still
that's
trying to figure
that's
that
an
out.
insult. That was an insult.
There you go.
So what do you think of when? Because initially, when I brought that up, that's
Mhm.
kind of like, what did you think about that? As my impression of your type of humor.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've never heard anyone say that to me, and right in my head, I just kind of went like, who are some comedians really known for being talking about insults? And obviously, I think the gold standard or the guy on Mount Rushmore is Don Rickles, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he's a guy that has a way of saying things and kind of doing it in a way where it's like at the end you're kind of thinking to yourself, wait, he's just making fun of me and I'm laughing at it.
Yeah.
But I also thought of, and this is an interesting comic, and I don't know, I'm sure you know of him, Andrew Dice Clay. Like, I thought he was like one of those guys, back growing up, with a leather jacket, popping up the collar, smoking the cigarette, he was kind of one of those guys that back in the day was, known to being that. But then obviously, current day, Jeffrey Ross is kind of the standard for any kind of roasting. He's the closer, right? Like, he's the guy that, it has a way of saying stuff and doing that. So those are the three that came to mind. And it's funny because Andrew Dice Clay, obviously he had a lot of great, stories. The way he delivered his comedy was really good. And, like I said, Don Rickles is just one of those guys that's just amazing. And so, and then Jeffrey Ross, like we talked about that a lot. Like, we talked about roasting and kind of his style. So those are the three that came to mind. So when you said that.
Well, Rodney Dangerfield, even though like his comedy was mostly lines, he didn't really do roasting, but in his movies, he always plays the guy where he's saying zingers. He's always throwing zingers at people. Do you think there's a difference between kind of roasting and zingers?
I don't know. That's a good question. I would say so, only because I think zingers are kind of like those one-liners you kind of throw in every once in a while. Whereas roasting, you kind of go in on the person. I think there's kind of more depth to the roasting than it is like a zinger. Like, a zinger could be something like, like we're wearing the same color shirt. We could have been like, hey, our stylists are on the same page, that kind of thing. And that's more of a zinger. But if you go a little bit with more depth, I think that's kind of more roasting. Like, I think especially when you think of like, we talked about Jeffrey Ross, like he's got a way of like going deep and like it's there's a lot to his insults.
Yeah. Now, Judah and I always, when we break down comedy, the quadrilateral we always talk about is surprise. There has to be surprise, common culture. So there's some commonality that you understand, some tension, and then release. So like, the insult is building the tension, and then the release of it. So like, for example, sarcasm, if you're sarcastic, it has the tension, but there's no release. But if you know the person, then the release is, that he's not being mean. So what's the difference between like roasting, insult comedy, and just being mean? If you were to put those four categories into it, how would you change it? How would it come out?
I think mean is just a different level where it's not so much either there's more to the humor. There's like, oh, maybe more to the story between the person and that you're insulting, or it could just be mean. It's just like you just keep going and going and going and going to the point where it's like, dude, stop already. Like it's getting offensive to them. And maybe not so much, maybe offensive is not really a good word, but there's hurtful. Yeah. You're doing it with intent to hurt a person. Whereas to me, I think, the other categories are kind of like, in jest, humor, trying to get a laugh, making fun of something that, that you and that person have already made fun of in the past as well, but I think when you're mean, it's just, with intent to hurt more than anything.
Yeah. I was thinking concerning the quadrilateral that we were talking about, that the common culture is like the person you're being mean to is left out of that culture. Like you've got a group of friends who you're trying to laugh at that person. And so the culture is excluding that person, and then the tension is building, but it's never released for that person. It's always the people around because they're safe from being the target.
So it's almost, would you say it's more like an inside joke, but that person doesn't know that it's an inside joke? Maybe if it's like, the two of us and we're making fun of, let's say, Judah Buddha for a second, he doesn't even know that we're making fun of him. Is that what you're?
Well, maybe, but sometimes I think it's specifically that person knows that they're not part of that culture. Like they're on the outside and you're trying to make them feel on the outside, and they know that they're staying on the outside. But that's a phrase that Jeffrey Ross always says is, we only roast the ones we love. I think he always says that as a way to say, you know what, this is not about being mean or hurtful or tearing people down. It's about people who can really kind of withstand it.
Got it. Makes sense.
So I have a few Don Rickles lines, because you were saying he's the gold standard.
Yeah.
And so I want to get your reaction. So one, he's just doing just a comic relief, and he turns to this guy and lady in the crowd, and he says, is that your wife, sir? Jesus, what is it, a train? All right.
Oh, man.
Then one, he was sitting next to Robin Williams on a talk show, and he's like, he turns to him and says, I never met an ape before.
Oh, man.
One line I do remember and this was Bob Hope, and he's not known for being insult comic. But I remember after he died, there was a few comedians who were doing an interview, and they said the only joke that he heard him say that was kind of racy or kind of insulty was, he said, women, their short skirts are getting shorter and shorter. Sooner or later, they're going to have to powder 2 more cheeks. All right. So here's another few of them. Let's see. So this is to Frank Sinatra. When you enter a room, you have to kiss his ring. I don't mind, but he keeps his ring in the back pocket. Bob Newhart made the claim that I'm his closest friend. I never met Bob Newhart. What's Bob Hope doing here? Is the war over?
Oh, man. Yeah, he's I think, and I think the other aspect of that, his timing too, when he would say those, I think that's key as well, because he'll set it up, and then when you watch those clips of when he says those things, it is, the timing is just, Bob Newhart's another guy who's the timing, because he's more kind of the subtle, more subtle. But I think when it comes to Don Rickles, his timing of the joke, he makes sure he doesn't go right into the punchline. He kind of gives it enough time, because at first you're just kind of like the one joke about kissing the ring, kissing the ring, okay, and then he'll wait just enough, and then he'll come in. I think that's comedy. The timing of it is the important piece.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the surprise
Mhm.
and also the tension building.
Yeah.
If you didn't have any tension, then the timing. If it was too fast, then there would be no tension, and it wouldn't have the punch.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have the idea kind of simmer with
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who's kind of a roaster or insult comic in your life, like someone who you hang out with, and they're always kind of
Oh God,
roasting
yes.
people?
Yes, absolutely. One comes to mind, and one that Judah brought up the last time I was on. This guy named George, who we used to work with. Exactly
At
that.
youth services?
No, at youth guidance. So
Okay.
I mean, meaning him and I, like Judah and I worked with, and he is definitely a roaster. He definitely says, he'll say something and then he'll make fun of somebody, and it just gets to that point where it's like, dude, like it's almost like, why did you say that? Or I can't believe you said that. But it's always like, oh, but it's him, and but yeah, he's definitely one for sure.
My dad and my brother, they can throw insults out and they get away with it. My great grandmother, she was pretty nasty. She was a nasty person, and I only remember just a little bit of her because she passed when I was still a kid. But my grandmother and my mother and uncle and aunt, they all tell stories of how like really mean and nasty, and even to strangers, she would say horrible, ignorant things like to strangers. But my dad would say stuff to her, and everybody like they're afraid she's gonna lash out, but she would just laugh. So like they're eating, maybe passing some food or something, and he'd be like, whoa, save some for the rest of us. And, she would just laugh and be like, oh, and he'd be able to get away with it. But everybody else, she would just be really mean and nasty. So I don't know what do you think the trick is to be able to get away with that in a daily life? Because if you meet somebody new, I'm always feeling out comedy with new people.
Yeah.
So to me, I start with silly, goofy, and or self-deprecating humor, and then begin to feel out like where the line is for them.
Yeah.
If maybe too crass or too personal or something.
Yeah. I think you hit it though. I mean, knowing your audience and knowing the people that you're with, and then also, in terms of the person that I'm speaking with, he's like that when he's with people that know his personality, that know him to the point where it's like, oh yeah, that's just him. That's just how he is. Whereas if it was somebody new, then it'd be like, you may come in and be like, yo, did he just say that? What did he mean by that? And then the rest of the audience there be like, oh, that's just him or whatever. So I think kind of knowing the personality of that person, knowing the audience, that's how you get away with it. And I guess, in your example, your grandma, if she's always been like that, your family knows. So it's not like it's not like it's a big surprise. But if I were to have met her, and I would have been like, man, like, what's up with your grandma? Then you could have, or somebody else could have been like, oh, that's just how she is. Don't worry about it. But knowing your audience and that when that person, it's him or herself. Like, it's just, if that's how they are, then that's just how they are.
Have you ever tried to land an insult or a zinger, and then it doesn't land, and you're like totally mortified or humiliated? Can you think of a time when that ever happened?
Not recently, but I know that if that does happen, someone will just give a look, and I may just go wah wah, or just kind of like put my head down and be like, whoops.
I feel like I insult people unintentionally, like I put my foot in my mouth. I guess that's another way to describe it, is unintentional zingers or unintentional insults. I can think of two. One, I was trying to be edgy, and my dad and I, we joke when we're with each other, and I made a joke and he didn't laugh, and I felt so horrible because I think he felt hurt or something, or that he just didn't think it was funny. But you know how like your dad, you always want to make him laugh, and sometimes it's hard to really tell. So, you know, when we always talk, we're like, "Hey, you old hound dog, what you doing?" And you know, stuff like that. And then he would say, "Hey, you know, what are you doing? What have you been doing, working and stuff?" And I'd be like, "Hey, you ain't dead yet." And I was like, ouch. And he didn't laugh at all. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to make those jokes anymore. And then I was with my brother, and we went to Walmart, and there was a girl that I met through a mutual friend, and I would just happen to run into her every once in a while. And it was kind of like fall, wintry, you know, kind of cold. And her eyebrows were red, and you know, her face was red, you know, a little bit. And me and my brother are walking, and we see her, and we're talking, and my brother doesn't know her, and I'm like, "Hey," and I said, "Man, is it cold outside? Did it really get cold?" And she's like, "No." I was like, "Well, why is your eyebrows all red and stuff?" And then my brother, he goes, she just came from getting waxed." And then she was so embarrassed. Her whole face turned red. And I was humiliated. My brother was like, he thought it was the funniest thing. He just kept laughing and laughing. I was like, oh, man. And she never talked to me again after that.
Wonder why.
It was unintentional, but it came across.
Yeah. I think that comes up. I think the last time may have been for me, like at a big staff meeting or something. And people were kind of just saying, you know, silly things, and I had said something, and it just everyone was kind of like, what? Like, it was just one of those things. And that's probably even more embarrassing when you're trying, like you said, like you're trying to be funny, and when it's not funny, you're just like, and sometimes that's, you know, how you respond to that, you know, is just as funny. So it's just a matter of, you know, being ready to, you know, like if you bomb, you bomb. I think that's one of the things, like in that you know, special that Jerry Seinfeld had, and he had, you know, Eddie Murphy, and they talked about the time when they said that the best time was when they bombed and all their friends were in the back table, and you heard someone do a stupid laugh because they knew that you bombed. And he said sometimes that was the best moments. It's like, like, you know, when you know you bomb, and it's like you're with your friends, and it's like, that's cool, you know, it just happens.
Yeah, that's the thing about comedy or jokes or humor, is you've got to have the confidence just to put it out there. You know, I think that's why women like humor, is that you have to be willing to just put it out there. If it's funny, it's funny. Take a chance.
Yeah, confident. Got to be confident. Yeah.
So even if it doesn't come across as funny, the attempt of being able to try it is, you know, that's how you begin to feel it out. You know,
is that how? Is that how you go to introduce yourself to women? Like, do you have like a go-to joke or a funny thing that you say that just as an inside to try to get someone's attention? Have you?
What I usually do to get attention is I'll throw like little rocks at them and then like peek out of the bush. Yeah, I try to make. One time I went and I set a date with this girl. We went to this place, and they were doing speed dating at the place. And
I remember you told me the story. I remember.
And then she got there, and I said, and we introduced each other and said hi and stuff. And I said, well, the good thing is if it doesn't work out, you can tap out and grab somebody else. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is, I was talking about she could tap out and grab another person, right? So tap me out.
Yeah.
But her face kind of went sour. I think she was thinking
you were talking about her.
Tap out and I can grab some, like another woman. And so I don't think she liked that. I don't think she liked that.
So needless to say, there was never a first date or a second date after.
Yeah, that was pretty much the end of that one.
That was crash and burn.
That was crash and burn. All right. So it's story time. So you said you have a story?
Yeah. So I just wanted to share like I said earlier before we came on, I went for a bike ride, and there's always that awkward moment when you're on a bike path and there's people walking and people biking, and you just don't know, like, especially now with social distancing, what's the proper, amount of space in between.
Yeah.
So I thought of a time when I was younger. I can't remember who the person was, but we were on a bike ride and we're on a trail and we're riding, and, you have this yellow line. So, you stay to the right or whatever. And we're riding, and all of a sudden this guy's like passing on your left. So what does my friend do? Actually goes to the left. Guy hits him. They spill. They fall. And I remember, like, oh crap. And then all I kept hearing, the guy said, I said passing on the left, passing on the left. And then my friend was like, oh, I thought you meant move to the left, move to the left. And I'm just like, and it was just a nasty accident. He was one of those guys, had the helmet, sunglasses.
Oh yeah, he was serious.
Serious biker. And here me and my buddy are wearing t-shirt, shorts, or whatever, just going on a path. I can't remember who it was, but I just thought about that, because as I was riding today, there was a moment where, I had my earbuds on and I'm riding, and I heard someone say passing on the left, and it just reminded me of that time. So I just was like, let me go to the right, just so I wouldn't hit the person. So.
Yeah, I think everybody passes on the left.
Yeah.
I think that's the courtesy thing.
Yeah.
Have I ever told you the story of where I was in seminary and I edited my professor's PowerPoint presentation?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So,
first of all, I can't believe I had the gall to do this. I don't know where my head was. Okay. So I was in seminary, and it was the last semester before I graduated, and it was biblical theology was the class. And we did block schedules. So instead of 3 hours a week, 1 hour, 3 times a week, it was one time a week. It would be 3 hours. Right.
Okay.
So this way it could accommodate people who had work and stuff like that. And so I had this professor, and he used to be a missionary to Sierra Leone for decades. And I had him for like 6 or 7 classes. It wasn't a big seminary, so I had him for a lot of classes. And the first day of class, we're going through the syllabus and everything. And the very last, they're always talking, the dates when stuff's due, all that stuff. And the very last day, he says pizza party. And he says, I like to have a pizza party in all my classes. And I already had like 6 classes with him. We never had a pizza party. So I was like, I got ripped off of pizza parties. I want my pizza party. So what I did was, for the whole semester, every time at the end of the class, he would ask for questions. I would always raise my hand, and I would ask questions about the pizza party. I would be like, so on the pizza party, are we bringing our own drinks, or drinks coming with, and I would always ask questions about the pizza party, always. And he'd be like, oh man, now I'm not going to put that on the syllabus anymore. Right. So I had the idea, like, wouldn't it be funny if I made a PowerPoint slide and I slid it into his PowerPoint presentation for the class, and why everyone's on break, because it was blocked 3 hours, we would get 15-minute breaks. That's plenty of time. Mm-hmm. So I made this thing, and I made it so that when you click on it, it would just be a blank screen at first. So you have to like look at it, because he would look at it and it would be nothing, and he would click again, and then everything would pop on. And I found every GIF I can find. I put it on there. It's like running dogs and wind, leaves blowing in the wind, and there was like a dancing alien and stuff like that. Anything that moved and animated, I just threw it on there. So it would say, you would click on it, it would just be black, and then you click it again and say pizza party, and then all these like things would come out, and they're like so he calls for a break, and everybody goes down, and I'm, working it, and I practice at home to be able to slip it in, to be able to work it, to insert it into someone's presentation. So I inserted a couple, slides down, because I didn't want it to like immediately happen. And we go down there, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so funny. And so we all come up and we're talking. It's not a very big class, maybe 15 people, right? And so one of the things I didn't take into account was because he was a missionary to Sierra Leone for so long, he gets very passionate when he's talking about like saving souls and stuff.
Oh, no.
And he gets teary-eyed, and he'll get really emotional. And so he starts getting emotional. I was thinking, oh my God, think about this. I was like, this is not gonna work out good. So he gets to the slide, it's a blank screen, and he looks and he's like, what? And so he clicks it again, and then it's like pizza party, and then he turns around and he's like, who did this? Who did this? Like, he yells it. And well, first of all, I applaud him on being innocent enough to not assume it was me. Like, who else in the class like talking about pizza party like the whole time? You know what I mean? Like, if it was me, I would have zoned in on me. I would have knew exactly who it is. And everybody's just like what? And so I was scared. So I like slowly like raised my hand, and then he just died laughing. He thought it was like the funniest thing. So I was like, whew. And so I graduate, a year goes by, and I get a call from an old friend. Mm-hmm. And he calls me, and he took the same class. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out the professor forgot to take that slide out. So a year later, he's just going through, and then it comes up, and then everyone in the class is like, what is this, a surprise pizza party? And then he just started dying laughing again. And my friend, he said, the professor told the whole story. Everybody thought it was funny. And he said from then on, he said specifically he was just going to keep that in there. He just thought it was so funny. And so as far as I know, it's still in there. But to this day, I was like thinking I would never be so bold to be able to do that again. But I figured you might understand a little bit because you've had college, and to just jump up and just to be so, because it's kind of rude. Yeah. It is a rude thing to do, especially when the person's very passionate about the topic you're doing.
Yeah. Nice little segue. It's not a good segue to go from that to a pizza party, that's for sure.
All right. Well, Rico, I appreciate your time. Mm-hmm. And maybe next Sunday, Judah will be back on. But if not, maybe Rico will join us again.
Yeah, and then you can make fun of my hairstyle looking like my T-shirt.
Yep, the flying flip-flops. All right. Thank you.